if you're in this for entertainment purposes, you're in the wrong business. This business is too powerful. Media is too powerful, and you have a responsibility to create socially relevant and accurate types of stories.
Welcome to Diving Into the Discourse, which features conversations with CSUN faculty and staff about the research and projects they are working on and how they impact our students and the community. I'm Carmen Ramos Chandler, your host for this episode. And since at the time of this recording, we're in the middle of Hollywood's awards season, we're going to be talking to Nate Thomas, head of CSUN's film program, about the state of the entertainment industry. In particular, Nate, let's talk about the Oscars. They're coming up. What do the Oscars mean for people in the entertainment industry? Are they as important as they used to be?
Oh, yeah. The Oscars are very important. They're the most important award show as far as monetary gain. You win an Emmy, you don't get a raise on your job. You win a Golden Globe, you don't get a raise on your job. You win an Oscar, you get millions, extra money, regardless of who you are. If you're a sound guy and you win an Oscar, you now go for top dollar the next time you do a sound project. So it's gold. It's Oscar gold, and it is worth a lot of money. So yes, it is as important as it has ever been.
Wow, but what about the issues that seem to rise, i.e. Oscars so white and things like that? Are those having an impact on the industry?
I don't think the diversity is where it needs to be, but you're seeing a little bit more, and I don't even know if it's as serious as it should be, but it's just enough to keep people quiet. But I think some folks are looking at diversity, especially in the content. I think especially with the streaming services, they're doing a lot of product that they were not doing and they weren't able to do because there were so many avenues for the information to be distributed. Now there's more with all the various cable networks and streaming, so they're doing more projects. But even at the feature film arena, they're able to do more things. This year, what does impress me about the Oscars this year, and I can often tell you what doesn't impress me, is that they have some films that are just a little bit different. They're telling stories that are kind of I didn't even know those stories existed. For instance, Rustin. That is a very, very little known story about the civil rights movement. And I think that story deserved to be told, and it's been well received. Another one of the films that have received a couple of Oscar nominations, American Fiction. Again, that is a different type of black story. We've seen black stories before, and they're pretty much, in many cases, are categorized into one area. That's a different type of story. So I think this year they're looking at the content that's a little different. I still don't think the diversity behind the camera is there. It's a long way from where it needs to be. You do see more people in front of the camera, but that's been for the longest. We've always had black people and other people of color, especially black people, in front of the camera. But when you look at the more of the content creators and also those folks that are running the studios, the networks, and the streaming services, they're virtually white male, if you want to be very specific. So diversity has a long way to go. But the content, I think, especially this year, is diverse.
What is it? You talked about some things you liked about the Oscars and the nominees. What is it that still irks you about the Oscars?
Wow, what irks me? Well, here's what irks me not only about the Oscars, but all award shows, is that millions of dollars are spent to get those nominations. And what I do have a problem with, if you say best actor, you're going to tell me that one actor was the best actor of the year. That's not true. That is the studio that had the millions of dollars to promote that film to get the nomination. So it is a popularity contest. So that's a part of the issue I have with the Oscars. I personally feel that there should be a couple of best actors. I mean, really, that if this actor was just as good as this actor, maybe there should be two best actors. So I think it's a popularity contest. It costs money. If the studio does not promote your film, you will not get a nomination. And I think some people have complained about a couple of films this year that were not nominated.
What do you think is the story behind Barbie?
Well, you have a couple of things with Barbie. It isn't traditionally a best actor kind of film, although there was a nomination with
America Forever?
yeah. So, but that kind of film seems that it would do better at the Golden Globes because they have a category for that film, and the Oscars they don't. They don't have a comedy or musical category. So a film like Barbie can fit probably be more acceptable in that category, even though it was kind of snubbed, I guess, a little bit at the Golden Globes as well.
So you're talking Oscars are intellectual elite.
It is. It's an elite, and we pay a lot of attention to it, and I think we give it too much attention. But it is what it is. But it isn't as fair as it should be. It has to be promoted, and if you don't have the money to promote it, it won't win. If you even look at, for television, the Emmys, I'm a member of the TV Academy. You cannot see all the television product that's out there. It's impossible. So it's a popularity contest. That's what it is. You can't see all the product, so you're going to hear what other folks are saying about various product that's being distributed on television, and that's how you're going to vote. Oscars are not so bad, but in some cases it is. There are hundreds of films that are released in the year that could be qualified for the Oscar. You have to run at least 7 consecutive days in a theater in Los Angeles or a theater in New York. That's all you need is 7 days, one screening a day. It could be the smallest commercial theater. You're now qualified to get an Academy Award. But it's not going to happen if you don't have the promotion behind it. And again, the studios, the neighborhood I live in, there's nothing but billboards for your consideration. I mean, millions of dollars worth of billboards with Maestro on one billboard and American Fiction on another. And so they promote those films. So that's my issue with the Oscars. It is what it is. It's a popularity contest, unfortunately.
If it's a popularity contest, how do people like me and you get to be considered?
Well, here's where I guess let me contradict what I'm saying. When it comes to Best Picture, when it comes to Best Actor, Best Supporting Actor, those honorees, those are the popularity contest. Where it's more fair would be in the technical considerations. If you're getting an Oscar for sound, you've done a good job at sound, and you've been noticed by your peer group, by the branch of the Oscars that nominate. Same with costume design and some of the pyrotechnic, some of the stunt, some of the technical visual effects and those kinds of things. Those, I think, are more fair, or even the documentary short subject or the live action short subject. Those are more fair, and those are judged by people that are specialists in those areas that may have won an Oscar as a short film or a short documentary or minimally have gotten a nomination. So they're really going to look at those films and really judge those films as opposed to it being a popularity contest. So I think the technical considerations are more fair, in my opinion.
What does it mean to the students, particularly film students, to watch and hear about these award shows like the Oscars, like the Golden Globes? What message does it send to film students or people who aspire to work in the industry?
Well, if you aspire to work in the industry, you aspire to win one of those awards. It's as simple as that. Everybody wants that. I had a guest he's an alumni, Michael Blake, and he's won 2 Primetime Emmys for makeup. And he won for Buffy the Vampire, and then he won in 2000, maybe 16 or 15 for Key and Peele. And then he decided to retire, and then he sold his house in Studio City and moved to Arizona. But he still came back over last year to visit my class. He drove over to visit the class. And he says to the students, let's be honest, we all practice that speech. You look in the mirror when you're growing up and you practice that Oscar speech. So if you're in the business, you do aspire to win one of those awards and be on the stage. You can't. And everybody's happy for it. I just looked just for a brief moment of time at the Grammys the other night. Again, I don't stay on those a long time. And Taylor Swift was there, like she's so surprised, and she wants that Grammy. All the millions of dollars that she has, she wants that Grammy. It means something. So the Oscars, it does mean something. And as I said earlier, our students are well aware that there's an effort and a push to diversify. But if you're trying to diversify, that means you're not diversified yet. You're not diversified yet. So our students realize it is still a struggle. And I think we have to be honest with our students. We have to be honest with our women students and our people of color. It is still a tough business. It is still nepotism. It is still, it's who you know. There are some people that are forced to diversify. And as I said earlier, if you look at who's running the studios, there still aren't that many people of color that are in the position of power at the head of a studio. They may get a couple of folks to produce. They may get a couple of mid-level executives. But the folks running all the studios, there are no black people running Paramount and the major studios.
But aren't they missing out on stories? Because if they see through their eyes, and it's not their fault, those are their eyes, their experiences, how are they able to appropriately tell the stories of the rest of the country?
Well, they haven't been able to do that, but in the old days, they did do it their way. So if you look at a lot of stories, look at, for instance, let's go back in history, the Red Fox, so the Sanford and Son, a lot of them were written by white writers. That's common. That's been very common that some of these stories were written by white folks. So I think you're right that to get more diverse stories, I think, and to be more authentic, you do need to start bringing in more people with those kinds of stories. And I think they are doing that. And I think, again, this year, looking at what's been nominated, I think they were open to doing that. And you'll get more authentic stories. Even on the streaming services, Reservation Dogs and stuff, these are stories that are written by Native Americans and produced and directed and acted by Native Americans. So they see that it can become authentic if they do that. So they're going to have to do that because our society is getting we're getting a little more careful about what we watch and what we like. And we realize that the time has changed for everything to be more authentic, and that those folks that are qualified to write those stories and have the experience and the culture to write those stories should be writing those stories. So it is getting better, but it isn't where it really needs to be.
Do you think, I mean, we've had this conversation before, but America itself, its population is getting more diverse. And I can only just speak from my own experiences. And I remember there are a couple of television shows that are really popular. Mind you, we're diversing from film to television. And they won awards up the wazoo, and they're iconic, and they're part of, television history. I would try to watch them, but I didn't see myself in them. So I stopped watching. Mm-hmm. Because I'm not upper wealthy New York white person, and I just couldn't. And I lived in New York, and I didn't see the New York I lived in, and so I stopped watching them. Do you think? I mean, how many times do you need to retell the same story again and again? This is version 1600 of whatever. Do you think if they start opening their doors, they might actually find their pocketbooks get a little more enhanced?
I think so, because what people fail to realize, that, and you nailed it, this is a diverse country now. The Latinxes are slowly increasing and eventually be the largest single probably population. And more so than just they're the population, and the black folks and the Asians are the population, they buy toilet paper, they buy soap. So these are the folks that are the consumers, and all of these products are being advertised on in particular television and streaming. So I think at some point, as this country becomes more and more diverse, that's going to make the change when they become the buying public. Because at the end of the day, it's all about money. If nobody goes to the movie, it pulls itself out of the theater within a week. I mean, if that film doesn't make money in the theater, next Thursday it's moving out, and they're going to move another movie in the next Friday night. If that show doesn't work on streaming, they're not going to renew the second season. And if it doesn't work on network, it won't be renewed as well if it doesn't do well in the ratings. So I think as we become more and more diverse, they're going to be forced, the powers that be will be forced to look at the diversity, because folks are going to want to see what's reflective of them. And that's starting to change. It still isn't where it belongs, but it is starting to change.
Why is it so important that people, particularly your students of color, be there in Hollywood? What do they contribute to help shape the storytelling because of their unique backgrounds?
Well, it's simple. No one else can tell the stories that they have. Or if you tell them, it won't be as authentic as it will for them. So as our society and the viewing public in particular becomes more sophisticated, the expectations are more. Mm-hmm. So I had a studio exec about 5 years ago said in the first 10 minutes, I need a sex scene. So I think the audience are expecting more, and we're going to just have to give them more. And that's that's kind of the way it is right now, because the studio has a goal. Mm-hmm. They got to figure out what the people want, give it to them, and then whatever we got, try and make them want it. So,
and I guess if your audience is more and more diverse, you got to figure out a new way of telling those stories.
You got to find a new way of telling the stories, and they want to see some other stories. And again, ultimately, they want to see themselves reflected on the screen. Now, we have another problem in this country, and it's our politics. So as we look at the things that are happening in some states like Florida, where they're taking Black history out of the schools, when you're excluding them, then there's the stories that are a part of the American story that are not going to be made into movies, that are not going to be open to consumption for other Americans, because we all learn about other parts of this country with those kinds of stories. So I think there's a conundrum right now with all the politics that are going on, but you learn from stories. And I've, as old as I am, I've learned from stories. I said, God, I had no idea that story was going on. Or a friend of mine, Robert Townsend, who is a legend, and just a couple of years ago got an honorary doctorate here at Northridge. Now he's directing the new reboot of The Wonder Years. I remember he hosted our senior film showcase a few years back, and we had a film screening called Braceros. And as well versed in everything that Robert Townsend is, he says, I never heard of the Braceros. So he learned something from this 15-minute senior film about the Braceros. So we all can learn from films. And that's a diverse story. Braceros is a diverse story. So the audience is, again, as I said earlier, we're more sophisticated and we're wanting more. We're tired of the same old boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl back. We're ready for something different. Or if you do that story, you got to have another twist.
We forget that film and television teaches us about ourselves, but also tells us stories we did not know. Remember Rosewood?
That's right.
When did we learned about Rosewood? Because they made a movie about it.
Because they made a movie about it. And that's why movies are important. When I moved to L.A. And I was in film school, I saw a film that completely changed the way I felt about the boat people. I felt that there was no room in America. We were, Black people weren't finding jobs. There's just no room. You got to go somewhere else. And then I see this Hollywood movie called The Killing Fields. And after that movie, I said, come to America. Come. This is the place for you to be. So that's a movie, not a documentary. It's a movie based on a real story, but it's a movie. So movies have a way of, can be propaganda, obviously, but you learn. And because of the emotional content in a movie, that helps as well. And it can change the way the cogitations of people feel. And so what I do say to the students is that if you're in this just for entertainment purposes, you're in the wrong business. This business is too powerful. Media is too powerful. And you have a responsibility to create socially relevant and accurate types of stories That is your calling. And I had a conversation with a student this morning in class. He says for our projects, these little intermediate projects, he says we're going to do this one story, but he goes, I'm thinking about the senior project. And then I said, well, you're not in senior yet. Students come in worrying about the senior project already. You got a year for that. He goes, but I want to know, if I do something goofy, would that be chosen as a senior project? I said, well, it needs to have a story structure, and it needs to have a message. I said, I can't say for sure, but if you do something goofy, we probably wouldn't choose it. We wouldn't choose it to be produced. It needs to have story. It needs to have a message. That's what the expectation is. If it's just going to be goofy, why are you going to film school? You can just get a camera and create something on YouTube, So there has to be a message, and understanding how pervasive this media is, the medium of film and television, and use it for good, and it can change people.
Of the films that have come out in the past year, what have you seen them all first?
Of course not. Of course not. Of course, I got a stack of links I can go on. Those folks that vote for the unions and stuff, we all get screeners, and it used to be a DVD. Now you go on a link, or you can go to some of the theaters to see the films, and sometimes they'll have the filmmakers or the star there. But I have a bunch of links from the SAG Awards that some I've seen, the American fictions and those kinds of films I've seen, and Oppenheimer's and Barbie. And I was surprised I saw Barbie, but I did, and actually I liked it. So there's a funny story around Barbie, but I did see it, and actually
it made me cry.
Yeah, I must give here. I was wrong. It was a good movie, and I was prejudging Barbie.
Well, I mean, you're making a movie about a doll, and there's a large discussion of whether that doll should be in the house or not. And I'll be quite honest, I did not buy my children Barbie. Oh, I take that back. I did buy them the CSUN Barbie.
Okay.
Remember, there was a CSUN
right.
Barbie.
I remember, that's right.
Other than that, my daughters did not have Barbie. But after seeing that film, I'd buy the film Barbie.
It was a good film. Yeah, that was a good film.
But of those films that you've seen, what moved you? What changed? You were like, damn, it got me thinking.
I think Oppenheimer made me think, because that's serious. That is still a threat, believe it or not. That's still a threat. But it's a historical piece. But it's something that should be studied, and it's something that the younger generation should know about. And I'm glad to see that they embraced it. Mm-hmm. So that was it. Barbie, the message behind it, women empowerment, I really love that. And we need more of that. So I was proud of that. I was proud of the women that worked on the film, the director, Greta. She did a great job. But there were other films, in the past year that I enjoyed as well. Now, some of them were kind of hokey. I even went to see Megan.
Oh.
That's escapism, right? And I went to see Megan just for escapism, just like everybody went to see Chucky. Oh, yeah. And I went to the theater. I says, I'm going to sneak in doing like a matinee at noon on a Saturday, so nobody will see me there. So there's no chance of a student walking into that theater and wondering why I'm there. I got in that theater, 12 was packed. Megan was packed.
Wow.
At 12 noon on a Saturday, sold out. I got in. People went to see it. I saw men sitting there alone. People went to see the movie.
And was it good escapism?
I think it was good escapism. And every once in a while, you need that. And there was a message there, too. You're dealing with technology, and there's a little message there. And, of course, it did well, because they're shooting they're shooting Megan, too. They're shooting Megan, too. So, yep, so there's... But there have been... Oppenheimer was good. Barbie was good. Rustin was good.
American Fiction?
American
Fiction. I want to
Fiction.
see that.
American Fiction was good, and I'm real proud of my student Parker Caston, who is the personal assistant to Sterling K. Brown. who got an Oscar nomination. So I did ask Parker last month, so you were there when all this was happening? And he says, yes, because I'm handling all the flowers and all the emails and keeping everything. You get those kind of accolades once you get an Oscar nomination. But and then I asked him, I says, how did Mr. Brown take it? I mean, he's won other awards. He's won Emmys and SAG awards and Golden Globes, but he hadn't won an Oscar. He says, he sees it. He's grateful. He has gratitude. He says he has gratitude that he's in this industry. So he doesn't see himself as a star. He sees this as a business, and that he has a mission in this business. So he says he had the gratitude, and he also was extremely honored to be in the category with Robert De Niro. He says, but other than that, he says he wasn't. I said, did he smile? He goes, he did a small smile, but he wasn't jumping up and down giggling like I would. But American Fiction was a good film. And again, it was a different, as I said earlier, it's a different type of black film. Our films tend to be categorized one way, and the people that represent it tends to be represented one way. There's only like one side of Black America that the media over the years has presented, and that's not true. And I think seeing more films like American Fiction, was good. I think that was a good thing.
I want to see that, but I'm a big fan of Jeffrey Wright, so
he's good.
I will see anything he's in. I love him.
So now we got to wait and see who's going to win, because you really never know.
No. And did you see the Scorsese film?
Of course, yeah. Yeah, well, it is what it is. He's Scorsese, so he's a master filmmaker. I don't think he's ever done anything that wasn't great. But I'm also you need people like him to tell some stories. And
you mean like he opens the door?
Yes. Whereas it may not be his culture telling that story, but he's willing to tell that story. So I have to give folks like that credit, because they have the wherewithal and they have the power to get those stories made. If it wasn't for Scorsese and some of the other A-listers, that story may not have been made.
So basically, to use the political term, he used his privilege.
Yes, he did. And I used to have a problem with that. I used to have a problem, and I tell you, speaking of the new Color Purple, the old Color Purple, well, the new Color Purple got snubbed in the Oscars this year, but the old Color Purple, when I first found out before it opened in theaters that Spielberg had directed, I got kind of mad. And Amistad, he also directed Amistad, and I got kind of mad. I go, why in the hell is Steven Spielberg directing a slave movie, and he's directing The Color Purple? And I was a little upset. I said, there's enough black filmmakers and black writers that can tell that story. And then I heard him on a talk show, and he explained why. And it was his privilege. He says, because those stories would not have been made if I hadn't put my name on it. And he goes, I felt these stories were important enough for people to see, and that my own children could enjoy those stories. He says, so that's why I opted to put my name on it and do it, or they would not have been done. And then he had me. I said, that makes sense. And I think that's the same way with folks like Martin Scorsese, that he can use his privilege, and he's using it for good to tell some stories. So, it is what it is, and you have to really be appreciative of them.
Do you think, because of how successful that film was, other filmmakers could say they might be willing to tell another version, another story from a Native American perspective, an indigenous perspective, and allow someone who is indigenous to be in charge of telling that story?
I think so, because here's the other thing. It's all about money. And as people of color become more of the buying power in this country, they're going to have to do that. And then you're also when you're looking at the demographic of who's going to watch those movies, you're going to pull up some new people that were never watching movies before. And that means more money. Unfortunately, in this country, it's about money. It's about ratings for television, and it's about money. But then again, on the other hand, I think there are some people that are honest, that want to help tell those stories. Folks like George Clooney. Who I like what he's doing with his Roy Ball School, that he's really trying to diversify the industry. So there are people that realizes their privilege and are willing to use their privilege to help others. So I can't be at fault for that. But again, in the old days, I had an issue with that. But again, I've been able to, see the real story and appreciate it for what it is.
How do we, in the communities of color, continue to take advantage of these cracks in the ceiling and these open doors? Maybe they only opened a little tiny bit, but how do we take advantage? Or is it too much pressure on communities of color that you have to be perfect? You're not allowed to fail. And failure is where you learn.
Yeah, failure is where you learn. And one of our mentors, Donald Petrie, who visits our classes all the time, always says you learn more from your failures than your successes. However, for women and people of color in Hollywood, sometimes you get one shot. Film doesn't make money, they don't give you another shot. Show fails in the ratings, you don't get another shot. Others get other shots. But historically, people of color were given one chance, and if it didn't work, it was pulled from them. So I'm hoping that gets better. They're almost saying, all right, see, we tried. We gave you that shot, and you didn't do it. So, but I'm hoping it gets better. But again, you do learn more from your failures than your successes. That's a part of the human learning experience for all of us. Yeah.
So what do we have to look forward to in the coming year? Have you heard anything about what new movies may be coming out that we might want to see?
Not really. There's some stuff coming out, but usually when I see the trailers, like when I saw the trailer of American Fiction, I got to see it. And then also, I didn't want to see it, even though I have a link to go see it. I saw American Fiction. I went to the Limleys. I went to the theater to see that. So I'm still an old school, got to see it on the big screen. There's some things that are right for streaming. There's some things that are made for the big screen and made to enjoy with an audience. It's a shared experience for movies. Barbie, I think, was a shared experience, and I was shocked, but I get it after I went there. It was a shared experience, and even my film Megan, that was everybody was screaming and hollering and laughing with Megan, the little doll that was around killing people, So I think it's a shared experience, just like going to the opera or going to a performing arts kind of center, or going to a Broadway play. It's a shared experience. It's much different than television. So, yeah.
For me, a comedy has to be a shared experience. Laughing out loud by myself doesn't do it.
No, it does not. It has to be a shared experience. And it's different. It's different if you see it. And there are a lot of people that won't. They'll see it at home. And I'm saying you're missing something if it's a comedy. I mean, you may have got a couple of chuckles at home. You should have been in the audience.
Is streaming screwing around with movies? Is it changing how movies are made?
Of course it is. But which also means the feature film industry is going to have to adjust. Whether it means less theaters or theaters have less seats, it's going to adjust, but it's not going to go away. I mean, you've heard that movies are dead. I've had faculty say movies are dead. They're not dead. Is the opera dead? Is Broadway dead? Right? People still go to plays. Just because movies started, they didn't stop going to plays. That's a different experience. So going to a movie is a different experience. Eating popcorn, being out for the evening, going to dinner beforehand or afterwards, that's a whole experience. So they'll just change how movies are done. Mm-hmm. One of the things, there's some conflicts between the streaming services and the movies. Obviously, the movies want the movies out there a little bit longer before they go to streaming. And streaming is wanting that movie to come like within a couple of weeks, get it on the platform, which will hurt the box office, but will help the streaming. So they're still fighting over that. How long can the movie be in the theater before it starts the streaming and then subsequently start cable? So they're all fighting. And it goes back to what I said earlier. It's all about money. Mm-hmm. It's all about money. That's exactly what it's about.
I'm showing my age. I prefer the theater. I don't mind. I mean, the streaming costs almost a little bit more than the damn ticket, but I'm in the theater with like-minded people, and even if there are only 10 of us in the theater, I still am in some way conscious of our collective enjoyment of what's on that big screen. And I love the big screen. You know what I mean?
No.
big screen.
Yeah, it's not a TV.
No, I don't care how big your TV is.
It's not a TV, and it's just different. It's different, and it is a shared experience. And you're right. There is a connection with the people in there. You are sharing something together, so it's not going anywhere. Movies are not going anywhere. But again, I've had faculty in the CTVA department that says movies are dead. No, they're not dead. And here's another reason. If movies are dead, the Oscars dead. Think the Oscars are going anywhere?
No, and next month we'll find out.
That's right. They're not going anywhere. So, no. Movies are here to stay because it is its own experience. Yep. And I still got to see a movie on the big screen, and that's the way I have to see them.
Well, I thank you for joining us today.
This is fun.
I really enjoyed talking to you. Thanks for joining Diving Into the Discourse.
All right. It's a pleasure.